Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the October 21st, 2013 meeting of the Town of Los Gatos Joint Town Council Parking Authority. First of all, I will ask all of you here in the audience to place your smartphones on silent or vibrate. And secondly, if you intend to speak to us this evening on any matter, including verbal communications, fill out one of these buff cards and hand it to the clerk over to my left. And I will ask the clerk now to do the roll call.
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Joe Przynski.
Here.
Councilmember Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember Diane McNutt.
Here.
Vice Mayor Steve Leonardis.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Barbara Spector.
Here. As you know, when we do the Pledge of Allegiance here in our chambers for the town council meetings, we have a stellar student join us to lead that flag salute. Today, that person is Sonali Ranavira. And Sonali, if you'll please come and join me up here. Now, again, if you pay any attention to our meetings, you also know that these students are amazing. And as I tell you about Sonali, you will learn that she is absolutely amazing. She is an 8th grader at Rolling Hills Middle School, a member of the National Junior Honor Society. Her favorite subjects are science and leadership. She participates in track. She performs Kandayan dancing. It's a dance type from Sri Lanka. She performs that at various events. She loves to volunteer and help less fortunate children. She founded Recycling for Smiles at the age of 11. And you can go and see that at facebook.com/recyclingforsmiles, which collects CRV recyclables from friends, neighbors, and businesses to help less fortunate children in the world. Since March of 2012, she has raised over $12,000 by recycling over 18,000 pounds of aluminum, plastic, and glass. Thus far, Sonali has donated $7,000 to Smile Train to help pay for 28 cleft lip surgeries for children from third world countries. Lately, she has donated money to numerous other causes to help children. Currently, with the help of her older brother, Mano, she is raising money for dental care for kids in Sri Lanka. Recycling for Smiles doesn't take cash donations unless the money is from recycling, because recycling saves energy and natural resources while reducing landfills. Recently, she was awarded one of 10 National Coles Care Scholarships for outstanding volunteerism. Sonali and Mano also received the first annual Charlotte Bacon Act of Kindness Award that's named for one of the little girls who was killed at Sandy Hook Elementary. This award is designed to encourage children from around the world to engage in acts of kindness. For more information, please feel free to email Sonali at recycling4smilescharity@gmail.com. I told you she was amazing. Let's give her a round of applause. If you'll please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty, justice for all. Thank you.
Let's give her another round of applause. We are now at our presentations. Now, over the years, the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office and the town of Los Gatos has worked together and interfaced on many issues. We are very honored this evening to have with us Santa Clara County District Attorney Jeff Rosen, who will be joining me up there, and he has some thoughts to share with us. It's customary to face this way and to have a microphone.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come and speak with you tonight, Mayor Spector, and it's nice to see all the council members here as well from Los Gatos. The mission of the District Attorney's Office, of course, is to aggressively pursue justice in a way that's fair and treats everyone equally and with respect. There are two primary ways that we fight crime in our county. One way that we hear of a lot is through what I would call hard power. Hard power is arresting and prosecuting and putting bad people and bad guys in jail and in prison, and that's one way that we protect the community, working very closely with all the police departments in our county, including your own. A second way that we in law enforcement fight crime is through soft power. Soft power are programs and opportunities where we try to intervene with youth that are perhaps on a path towards gangs or towards drugs and towards committing crimes. So it's through this combination of hard power and soft power that we in law enforcement try to work with communities in order to keep the crime rate very low. It's been my pleasure to work with the city of Los Gatos in both of these areas, in hard power and soft power. Really the first example that I can give of prosecution and arrests deals with prosecuting very prominent case that happened in Los Gatos a few years ago, the murder of one of your residents who owned a restaurant and was unfortunately murdered, and that's a case that I worked very closely with your police department and worked very closely with Sergeant Clinton Tata, who's here from the Los Gatos Police Department tonight. And during that case, which took many months to put together and solve, Sergeant Tata wrote 25, 30, 40, 50 search warrants. It was a lot of search warrants that he wrote, and he just did an outstanding job. The proclamations that I have tonight for you, Mayor Spector, are one, a proclamation that really speaks to hard power, and that's been the involvement of the Los Gatos Police Department in the CSET task force since 1983. It's a task force that exists throughout the county with officers from many departments in Santa Clara County participating, and it specifically targets violent crime, gang activity, and large-scale drug trafficking. Your police department has been an active participant in this task force since 1983. The work of this task force has resulted in the seizure of hundreds of pounds of methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, as well as the arrest and prosecution of dozens of gang members. Most recently, the indictment of 48 members of the Nuestra Familia criminal street gang was through the efforts of this task force as well as others. So that's the first proclamation that I have for you, Mayor Spector.
Thank you.
Okay. And the second proclamation deals with soft power and the programs that we have in law enforcement and the district attorney's office to try to keep young people from becoming involved in gangs and a life of crime to begin with. So there's a program that we run from the district attorney's office that we work with your town, the city of Los Gatos, and it's called the Parent Project. Since the Parent Project was instituted in our county, more than 2,000 parents have gone through this program, many from the city of Los Gatos. Parents are referred to this program from our juvenile court, from schools, from their churches and synagogues or mosques, and it's really a program that helps strengthen the communication between parents and children, particularly when teenagers, and I see there's a few teenagers here tonight, perhaps begin towards a path that's not the one that their parents have set out for them. So this is a program that is really trying to strengthen the family, really the strongest and most important unit in our society, and many parents have gone through this, and it's helped strengthen many families and prevent many young people from becoming involved in crime and instead continuing on a productive path. So thank you very much for participating in this program with us, Mayor Spector, and I have this for you as well. You may now have rebuttal or argument.
I would never rebut anything that somebody says so nicely. Jeff, thank you for coming here. Thank you for the proclamations. On behalf of the council and the town of Los Gatos, we truly appreciate it.
Very well. Good night.
Now, I do understand that Mr. Rosen has a lot of commitments this evening, and so if you don't stay with us through the entire meeting, I do understand. We did have a closed session this evening, and so Ms. Prop, do we have a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor, council members, members of the public. The council met in closed session as duly noticed on the agenda that was posted. They took no action, and there's no report out.
Thank you very much. Now we have council town manager reports, starting with council matters. Anything that anybody from the council wants to report out? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Spector. I attended 2 meetings since our last council meeting on behalf of the council and the town, and one was the Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee, and the other was the West Valley Sanitation District, and I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. I attended the last North 40 Advisory Committee meeting, and we completed our work of passing the draft plan on to the Planning Commission after a draft environmental impact report has been completed. Been working on that committee with Mr. Bourgeois, who I see in the audience, and Mr. Brzezinski, who I see up here at the dais. Thank you both very much. Manager matters.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, only one item tonight, and this Saturday is one of our periodic drop-offs from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Parks and Public Works Department at 41 Miles Avenue for not only unused prescription drugs, but also batteries, thermometers, and selected other hazardous materials. And it's something we do periodically to protect our landfills, water streams, and supply. So that concludes staff report tonight.
Thank you. We're now on consent calendar items. All of the items on the consent calendar will be approved in one motion unless somebody from the council or the community or the audience removes an item from the consent calendar. Looking first to the council. Seeing no one, does anyone from the audience wish to pull an item from our consent calendar? Seeing no one coming forward, I will look to the council for a motion. Mr. Brzezinski?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Brzezinski, seconded by the Vice Mayor. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We are now at verbal communications, where anyone here who wishes to speak to us on an item that is not on our agenda may come forward. I do have one card, John Bourgeois.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. John Bourgeois, 420 Alberta Way. Just a quick announcement tonight. I've spent the past, I'd say, year and a half or so on an advisory committee to the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District as they've been going through a revisioning process. They've been reprioritizing their goals and objectives, and I was part of that committee that helped shape that. As you know, areas such as Bear Creek Redwoods, Sierra Azul, St. Joseph's Hill, they're all very important parts of the open space of the Los Gatos community. And so if anyone has an interest in this process and these priorities, there are going to be a series of public meetings. They're going to be regionally, since the district is very large. The one in this area is actually next Monday, so a week from today, Monday night from 6 to 9 p.m. at West Valley College. And you can find out more information at openspace.org. So thank you very much, and I encourage anyone that is interested in open space in Los Gatos to attend and have their voices heard. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address us under verbal communications? Seeing no one coming forward, we will now go to other business, which is agenda item 4, entitled An Information Report, Potential Amendments to Town Policies Regarding Community Benefits. And I do understand that Sandy Bailey will be making the presentation on behalf of staff.
That's correct. Thank you, Mayor Spector and council members. First of all, I'd like to point out that there is a desk item on this matter tonight. The desk item is a public correspondence regarding traffic impact fees. I'd like to make for clarification and the record that the traffic impact fees was not agendized for tonight's meeting, and that will not be up for discussion tonight. However, traffic impact fees is tentatively scheduled for council consideration in 2014. So I have a very quick presentation tonight. A joint study session with the Town Council and Planning Commission was held in 2011 to discuss potential amendments to the town's infill and traffic policies regarding community benefit. And Jackie, oh, there we go. From this study session, there was 3 summarized directions, and I went too far. There we go. The first direction was that community benefit should be replaced with the revised fee structure that is directly related to the impacts of the project. The second direction was that planned development should be required to have community benefits or amenities. And the third direction was just to consider eliminating the term community benefit. In regards to number 2, for planned developments, that was suggested to offset any deviation from town development standards. So what we have tonight under consideration for council recommendation are 3 items. One is to amend the traffic impact policy. That would be to eliminate requiring a community benefit for projects that generate 5 or more peak hour trips, and to do a study on the traffic impact fee increase. The implementation of this consideration would provide a direct nexus to the traffic impacts associated with the development. Parks and Public Works is reconsidering the last traffic fee analysis, which was presented to council in 2010, and will return to council in 2014 to discuss the fee increase. The second item is to require community benefit or amenities for planned developments. Although this is up for consideration for tonight, staff is recommending that this matter be held pending council discussion and direction on planned developments in general, which is scheduled for later this year. And the last item is to eliminate the term community benefit. This would require amending the town's traffic policy, the town's infill policy, and rescinding the community benefit policy. So that concludes staff's presentation, and we're available for any questions and looking forward to further directions.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Ms. Jensen.
Ms. Bailey, I apologize for being hopelessly confused, but one of your bullets is that we talk about amending the traffic impact policy and study a traffic impact fee increase, and yet you told us in your presentation that we're not talking about that tonight, so I'm confused.
You would not be specifically talking about how much to increase a traffic impact fee. You can direct us to continue studying that matter, but we cannot get into the specific fees itself.
Follow-up?
Ms. Jensen.
So where on your bullet it says amend the traffic impact policy, that's the second paragraph in the resolution 2002-175, that's attachment 3. Or is that something different?
Attachment 3 is the community benefit policy. Are you talking about the traffic impact
Well, I'm trying to
policy?
figure out, yes, what it is,
That would be attachment 1. And I'd have to look for it, but it basically says the community benefit is required for 5 or more peak hour trips.
okay, thanks.
Further questions from Ms. Bailey? All right, and I do understand that we're not going to be making dollar amount decisions relating to traffic impact, but we are discussing the concept within the staff report.
That's correct.
All right, very good. If you want to talk to us on this agenda item, please submit a card. I do have 2 cards. The first one, Jack Van Naden.
Jack Van Naden, 165 Euclid Avenue. At tonight's council meeting, there will be a discussion of the fees charged to developers. There seems to be some intertwining of fees in that the policy seems to address both a community benefit, which seems to be a judgmental benefit offered by the developer to the community, and then there's the construction fee and possibly the traffic mitigation fee, which is figured out by the engineering department based on the increase in traffic. Addressing the construction fees first, it seems that the records show that the fee is 1, very low from the day it was implemented, 2, very low to extremely low when compared to other towns, 3, has been essentially static since it was set up around 1991 and approved 3 years later. In 2010, there was a study done on the cost of the construction fees. These were found to be between $1.41 and $2.09 for commercial construction. The council then adopted a fee of $1 per square foot. There was probably a reason for that, but I would like to know why the fees were reduced, when even Mrs. Rooney at that time stated that the fees often don't cover the costs and you have to dig into the general fund to pay for the improvements. 5, we did find fees to be all over the board, even within the same municipality. It would be informational for us to understand why the traffic mitigation fee can vary from $1 per square foot to $13.54 depending on the city. There does not seem to be one document that delineates the fees, and even then some are calculated by the town engineers and others have a fixed number. To the layman, the process and procedures are unclear, possibly because the information is in multiple documents instead of as a single source. 6, there's no calculation for the soft cost to the general population that is caused by the additional commute time, the additional costs generated by the additional pollution, and the loss of the small town ambience as it moves from a small town to a small city. The community benefit should come up with a number to compensate the residents of Los Gatos for this daily loss. Good comments were made 2 years ago about changing the community benefit policy, but here we are. Actually, I think it's 3 years now, later rehashing the same things. Not only has the train of thought been lost, so was the momentum. What was the cost to the town for the staff to go back and recreate the whole discussion on the community benefit? The decision on this has dragged out much too long. Here are some of the fee discrepancies that make me think our fees are much too low. San Jose, $13.54 a square foot. Sunnyvale south of 237, $198. North of 237, $455. Back in 2005, San Francisco was over $10 a square foot, Gilroy over $20, and Fremont over $250.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Van Naden? I do. I just wanted to understand what you were saying. You started out talking generally about a construction fee, which you distinguished from a traffic mitigation fee. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm not totally clear on all that I read because things come in different documents, but it appears there's a construction fee, which is to cover the cost of the roads from all the construction equipment that goes to and from a site. Then there's a traffic mitigation fee, which I believe is a fee that is that costs the developer for putting in additional stoplights, stop signs, crosswalks and that sort of thing. And then there is the community benefit fee, which is the one that I call judgmental.
All right, thank you. All right, the only other card I have, because no one has submitted one, is Jeff Lockridge.
Hi, my name is Jeff Lockridge, 109 Paseo Laura. I think that the term community benefit should be eliminated since it's full of potential problems, being that it's a required gift from the developer, which seems a little odd to me. But what I mostly wanted to talk about was the controversy that's revolving around most of the traffic in Los Gatos. Getting from one end of town to the other, whether on Los Gatos Boulevard, Highway 17, University Avenue, or even Winchester, is a bumper-to-bumper problem. Not much different from the problems of getting from one side of town to the other, whether it's Main Street, Highway 9, Blossom Valley Road, or Lark Avenue, bumper-to-bumper. This kind of traffic is just including the developments that have been completed already. When the new medical center, Albright Way, and the North 40 are completed, we'll be dealing with a much bigger problem than we have now. We keep hearing that each and every one of our traffic concerns will be mitigated. But this mitigation costs money. Mitigation that will not happen without money. So if the town can't afford to improve an intersection here or there, or synchronize a series of traffic lights, it's because we don't have any money for it. And we have no real policy regarding what developers should be paying for those same traffic improvements. Nearby towns and cities are charging developers more than 10 times what Los Gatos charges. How can this be acceptable? How can we let a large development get by with being allowed to create or add to a huge traffic problem and only have to pay 10% to improve it? And in many cases, we're giving developers incentives or concessions to encourage them to build in Los Gatos. This situation has been languishing on our town books without a proper solution for over a decade and a half. The staff report document that's being referred to tonight is based on meetings that took place over 2 years ago. That's more than 48 of these same town council meetings that this situation could have been addressed, but instead was ignored. It starts to feel like our town government is supporting developers rather than our town residents. Planned developments should also come with their own fees. They shouldn't be free. Each and every one circumvents the intent and application of our town's general plan. Developers who take advantage of a planned development, which is just another way of saying an exception to our rules in Los Gatos, should pay for that privilege. I think it's high time that we send developers a message. If they want to play in Los Gatos, they'll have to pay Los Gatos, just like everywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? All right, I have no other cards. Does anyone else want to address us on this agenda item? No one's coming forward, so I will close the public testimony portion of this hearing and turn to the council for questions, discussion, motions. Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I wonder if we could ask staff to clarify some of the terms and calculations that have been presented to us so that we're all clear that we're talking about the same thing.
And if I might hook on to her question, within her question, if you could include construction fee and traffic mitigation fee.
I can do the traffic fees. In terms of the traffic fee, there is a resolution that deals with what the fees are, and it depends on the type of use. And it's in your packet under attachment 1. Attachment 1 of attachment 1. But it deals with, again, there's several different fees, but in terms of, for residential uses, it's $600 per average daily trips. For medical office buildings, it's $600 per average daily trip. That's for the first 10 trips, and then it's $120 per average daily trip thereafter. And that's a similar fee for office uses and other types of uses. There's also capacity improvements that are required, depending on how many trips are generated for a project, and those are for street improvements. They can either pay a proportion share of that improvement, or the developer can actually construct it. They have that option to do that. And again, that depends on what the intersection is or the roadway improvement is to determine the developer's fair share. There's also, I'm not sure if this was part of the discussion, but there's also a hauling fee as part of the building permit process, and that's to mitigate for trucks that impact the roadways, to make sure there's a fee to do the loads of the materials. That's to help upgrade the road systems. Is there anything?
Yes. Some questions were raised about the array of municipal fees. Most town fees are cataloged and presented to council through a public hearing process in April of every year. That's when the cost of living increase is applied to those fees that are allowed to have cost of living increases, such as many of our building and planning fees. There are then also fees such as the traffic impact or traffic mitigation fee, as well as one that was referenced tonight as a construction fee, but the council may recall it as a construction impact fee that was adopted by council a few years ago, that have been established by separate council action. I will ask staff to review, and even if for those fees that are separately established, I believe it would be helpful for the council and community to annually catalog them in the annual fee report, if we're not doing that already. I actually am surprised we're not, but I don't have the fee in front of me, the fee report, so I will make sure on a go-forward basis we do annually catalog all those fees in that annual document, even if there's no change recommended, just for ease of community access. And those tend to be adopted town-wide and then applied to projects. There are then a series of fees and charges that are applied to individual projects as they come forward, as Ms. Bailey just referenced, to deal with impact or improvements directly associated with that project. There then is the third category, which is the subject of tonight's discussion, which has been the community benefit definition previously used under a traffic policy previously adopted by council when there's more than 5 vehicle trips that the developer applicant would propose and volunteer a quote-unquote community benefit to the town. Based on your prior direction, that's the area we're trying to clean up. And I think the compilation of your prior direction to staff and what's being brought forward to this newly constituted council is to continue down the path of amending the traffic impact policy so that it is in alignment with the new traffic fee study we'll be bringing back to you in 2014, and that becomes the primary mechanism for traffic improvement funding. The concept of community benefit, or as we're recommending it be recast, is for amenities. What also came from prior council and planning commission discussion and direction would be for potentially planned developments, and that will be part of your discussion in November. And then clearly, community benefit has been an ambiguous term used with capital C, capital B, and small c, small b in many different ways, and we're trying to proceed down your prior direction of reducing, if not eliminating, the use of that phraseology because it can be so ambiguous. I think we've tried to address all the sorts of fees that were drawn up by the public.
Ms. McNutt, did that answer your question? Other questions? Ms. Jensen.
Actually raised a question for me because I thought I knew what the fees were, and I must say I'm with Mr. Van Natta that if I don't have a single document, there's no way I could figure out for a proposed development, for example, what fees are going to apply. There could be individual fees, as you point out. There could be a form of construction fee. There could be a traffic impact fee. There could be a traffic mitigation fee. So how would you talked about cataloging things in one place? How would you propose doing that? Or should we just have a fee schedule for developments that's not necessarily in a policy or it's referred to in some policy.
And I believe we already have that fee schedule. It comes to the council as part of a public hearing process every April. And what I will check with staff on is whether there are some of these fees that don't annually change that are not cataloged. But I would believe 95% of all town fees are annually cataloged already in that annual document, from park reservation to building permits to the construction impact fee. And what I want to go back is check the traffic impact and mitigation fee. What won't be cataloged in there, however, are the individual project improvements that, for example, come out as mitigations of an environmental review document. Those are costs and charges and improvements that are applied to a specific development based on their mitigations. They can't be pre-established in an annual FIA document. Those are part of the approval process for the individual projects.
Further questions, Ms. Jensen?
Just to follow up, I understand that as a member of the council, I can look at an annual fee schedule, and theoretically as a resident, maybe I could. But if I'm a resident, how am I going to figure out the fees that are being paid on a particular project or a particular event? I'm not going to be attending the annual budget meeting or reviewing the fee schedule, so how am I going to figure that out?
The conditions of approval identify what the fees are, and there's for the traffic fee, there's a disclaimer with that condition that it's the fee that's applicable at the time the project is constructed, and then for building permits, that's public record. Someone could look at the fees that's applied for building permits regarding the off-haul fee.
And that's what the fee schedule is available online. It's on the town website. And we just pulled up the 2013-14 fee schedule that's in effect this year. And then there's the individual building permits, which shows how those fees have been applied to individual projects as they come through the process.
Ms. Jensen?
One more, I promise. So what you've told me is how I can get the information after the fact. What if I'm considering a project coming forward and I want to challenge the fees, or I want to question the fees? How do I do that? How do I get the information that enables me to do that? You've said you can go look at what the building fees were. You can look at the conditions that are applied. But what if I want to figure it out such that I can either say, that's great, these fees are fair and appropriate, or I can say, these fees aren't fair and appropriate? How am I going to figure that out as the project is coming forward?
In terms of the traffic impact mitigation fees, there is the resolution that identifies what those fees are. When a developer comes in, they could go to the Parks and Public Works Department and they talk with the town traffic engineer, and he can do a preliminary traffic analysis based on the use that's proposed and the use that was existing. He can do a comparison to find out what the net increase is, and he can give them a preliminary number of what the peak hour trips are and can do a calculation so a developer has an estimate prior to filing an application.
Ms. Jensen?
I know I promised, but I'm sorry. You've described how the developer can get the information. How can the resident get the information?
The resident can get the information on an application that has been filed, or they want to request the information themselves for a specific development.
They've become aware by orange netting or some other means that the project is coming forward, and they want to get the information to present whatever their position might be at a planning commission or town council meeting. How would they get that information such that they could make an informed presentation prior to the meeting?
At the time the netting is up, that fee would already have been calculated by the Parks and Public Works Department, and there would be draft conditions of approval so they could get the information at that time or come earlier. Usually that information is available earlier than that process, so someone could come in that's public record in the file. It's actually a form that's filled out that's part of the file record.
All right, let me follow up on that. And Ms. Jensen's questions and Ms. McNutt's questions, because quite frankly, at this point, I am confused. I do understand that what staff is saying, that we are discussing community benefit. this evening, but I also understand that the traffic study impact fee is a part of that. You can't separate them out. So if there's a proposed development, what you're saying is that the proposed developer can meet with Parks and Public Works to determine what the increased traffic will be, and then determine what the increased peak hour trips will be, and then determine what the traffic impact or mitigation fee will be. And quite frankly, I don't know if there's a difference between traffic impact and traffic mitigation or not. I'm assuming that the building department is looking at the number of trips and multiplying it by some number. I'm assuming it's a dollar number. Are my assumptions correct? And what is that dollar number, and where do we find it?
The dollar number is in attachment. Let's see, attachment 1, I think of attachment 1. Let's see. So attachment 1 of attachment 1. And it's a couple pages in. It's Resolution 1994-55. So it's 1, 2. It's about 6 pages in, going front and back. A, B, and C talk about the cost for traffic impact fees regarding peak hour average daily trips.
And so would this number then be different from a construction fee, and is a construction fee based upon the square footage of the proposed development?
I'm going to go to the construction fee regarding capacity, the street intersection improvement. So no, that would not be part of this. That would be something the Parks and Public Works Department would analyze to determine what intersection or street improvements are in the area of the project, and they would do a study to determine what the proportionate share is. So that would not be part, that's not documented anywhere, where it's a case-by-case basis depending on where the application is located.
Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, like you, I was getting confused, and I'm still somewhere there. So a couple of things. First of all, I don't think we should use the term construction fee because I think it's very confusing. It starts getting mixed in with building fees and so on. So if we're only going to talk right now about traffic, as I understand it, so I'm going to restate and you tell me if I'm close to being. So there are 2 types. There is one that is a standardized formula that we have in a resolution and that is applied in every situation. And then we have one that's customized for larger, more complex projects that have an EIR and or some evidence of needing mitigation beyond just the normal formula over here on my left hand. So in terms of the public having that information, we'll do my left hand first. If it's the standardized formula, I'm not sure what they can argue about, because you can't change a standardized formula because you don't like what the resulting calculation is. You could argue about the number of cars, that is one of the elements of that calculation, but not about the formula itself. On my right hand, when we're talking about the customized, then that seems to me that's part of the whole discussion that usually comes up in a plan development application. And so that's part of the staff report and the whole application package. So I'm not exactly sure what residents are trying to get at in advance. But putting that aside, did I just explain the two different types and that are out there, customized and standardized formula?
Yes, you did. You got it right.
Okay.
Further discussion. Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're going to review in April the fees for this last year, or the fees that we're going to propose for next year. I would recommend that given the fact that this has been an issue that some of our members of the public have been concerned about, that we highlight this and we be really concrete and specific in noting what part of our fee structure relates to the traffic impact fees or to anything relative to our discussion tonight. Because my recollection of our annual review, everything is kind of inserted randomly throughout our document. I know it's not random, but for purposes of awareness, it doesn't reach a highlighted component that allows the council to do a more thorough evaluation. That's one question I would like you to consider. How are we going to make sure that we revisit this in our April discussion so that we have a good idea about the significant increases that are proposed in the fee schedule. Second of all, I would like to know the significance of comparison of our numbers with those other jurisdictions that have been pointed out tonight. That is there a significant difference in how we've calculated our fee schedule, and if so, why? I'm not assuming that San Jose is right. I never assume that, but I also think that we need to make sure that what we calculate has substantive reason to validate that particular number. And in terms of the issue of our public being aware of the schedule and how it applies to a particular project, I think it, again, behooves our public, particularly those who want to be informed, to pay close attention, to watch when projects are coming forward, to go ahead and proactively investigate with the assistance of the staff those things that are of significance as the project comes forward, not just in kind of a passive receptive way, but in an active way to allow them to be more fully cognizant of where we're going, so that so we have an informed constituency out there. So those would be the things that I would ask we put on our agenda for going forward in this regard.
And before we go to the Vice Mayor, Mr. Przinski did raise a question in there, which related to what is the significance to you, if any, of the differing numbers amongst or between jurisdictions?
The council may recall when we reported in 2010 on increases to a wide array of town fees and charges, including the traffic impact mitigation fee, there was both comparisons to other jurisdictions and sample impacts on hypothetical developments, what it would cost, I believe, for a single-family home versus a certain size commercial shopping center. And we did provide those examples to council. We will endeavor to do so again so that the council can decide what comparison is appropriate to other jurisdictions in the valley who in many ways share a clientele and a building environment and a construction and community environment that is the same, but still retain council authority and discretion to set fees as you so choose. I did want to point out that the public hearing that comes forward for the fee schedule, which does include the construction impact mitigation fee, I don't see the traffic impact fee in there at this point in time, but I've just done a cursory review. We'll certainly try to make that a comprehensive presentation for easy accessibility to the public, since it is on the town's website. Another notion I think we could follow up on in response to the council's discussion is using the fiscal impact section of our staff reports to possibly document what some of the fees and charges are that the project would be predicated on if it were to go forward, and see if there might be an attachment that could go with each staff report that documents the fiscal impact. We'll have to see the workload impact, but we can certainly report back to that to you when we come back with the traffic impact fee study, which will likely be a separate council study session prior to the April hearing, because as the council learned in 2010, those fee increases that were being proposed by staff were significant, and there were concerns and questions raised regarding those, and we'll want to allow ample time for that discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Spector. The town manager answered much of the question that I was going to ask. I concur with Mr. Przinski about the best practices approach to what other municipalities are charging and where we stand. Perhaps represented in the form of a matrix or something to that effect would be very helpful. I wanted to touch on the community benefit portion of our program this evening. And to me, it seems very subjective, and I was thinking moving forward, another approach would be best practices. What are other communities doing? What are other communities charging? And have that presented in a similar matrix, and perhaps think of it in terms of a percentage, not in terms of specific amenities. So that's what I think would be good going forward on that.
Because there are so many ideas floating around amongst the council, I will most likely be circling back before we end this agenda item to determine if we have a consensus on whatever we're asking staff to do, possibly asking staff to tell us what their understanding is of the suggestions that have been made, and then seeing if that is indeed what this council wants. Further discussion. Ms. Jensen.
I had a question and a request. Councilperson McNutt was talking about a customized fee schedule. I shouldn't say schedule because it's not a schedule, it's customized. Is there some document somewhere that indicates how Parks and Public Works comes up with those customized fees? Is it consistent? How is it reviewed? Where would one find it? So I'm wondering, can we get information regarding how those customized fees come about? They must be obviously the estimated cost to the town, but I don't know. I don't know if they're arbitrary. I don't know if they change from project to project. So I'd be very curious if there's a policy somewhere or a document somewhere that Parks and Public Works uses to come up with those fees, because they're obviously not in a, or I think they're not in some document somewhere. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Through the EIR process, primarily in the traffic studies. We will provide the council the methodology that we use and what those documents are. Traffic studies that are part of any environmental review typically include some assumption for improvements, and then there's an apportionment of those improvements out to the entity that's part of the environmental review process. That's the conceptual methodology. We'll try to drill that down to the next level for council consideration. For these specific fees, I just have up on, as an example from the town website, the fee schedule for storm drainage fees. Single-family lots for a subdivision whose lots exceed 1 acre, the fee shall not exceed that of 1 acre per lot, and it's $3,797 per acre. And it drops through a variety of parameters like that. And those are the fees where there's specificity that Public Works applies. The balance of the fees, the custom ones, come out of the environmental and traffic studies for each project based on general plan and other programmed traffic improvements. Then the third one, going back to the subject of tonight's discussion, it was our town existing policy requires applicants to propose a community benefit, which you could call a super custom, where they propose what the community benefit would be. And that originated out of the traffic impact policy, and that's what staff is recommending we move away from and rely on the revised and recalculated traffic impact fees that are coming back to you in 2014.
Ms. Jensen?
Just a comment on community benefit, since we're commenting. And I apologize for being such a dinosaur on this, but however, community benefit back in the day used to actually mean, is this project going to make Los Gatos better? Because there was a time when the assumption was if there were 5 or more trips, the project was denied. The community benefit policy came out of that as a means to allow a project that was worthwhile for the community to go forward, even though it caused that impact. And we've gotten away from that concept, unfortunately, to community benefit being synonymous with money. And it used to be an analysis of, will this make Los Gatos a better place? And unfortunately, that's not what it is now. So given that, I would ask us to go back to the drawing board, because I think the term community benefit has taken on a meaning that was not originally intended. I also think that it's become a way for projects to argue for approval by doing something that's not necessarily, by creating a benefit, quote unquote, that's not necessarily tied to the impact they create. For my favorite example is the lights on the Main Street Bridge, which didn't have anything to do with the particular project. So I would put in for one that I think we ought to rethink it. I think we ought to rethink the original concept, which was an analysis of whether this would make Los Gatos better or worse. So, and I know, and I favor the fact that we're going to hold off discussing community benefit vis-a-vis plan developments to another discussion. But I would be very much opposed to connecting a provision of an amenity to a plan development as a means of securing an approval.
Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. What I would suggest that we think about doing is having a study session somewhere between the council meeting where we have the discussion about plan development and the council meeting where we actually look at adjusting fees in the spring for going forward. And in that study session, and perhaps invite the Planning Commission if they are interested, and certainly the public, really start us back at ground zero and go through and explain with a primer in front of us each of the categories of fees and how they've been developed and where they're at, and which ones we have ability to customize or change, and which ones, once they're set, the calculation is the formula is what it is, and also go through which ones are limited to actual cost that we can't charge above that and make a profit. It's against the law to do that, and which ones we have more flexibility on. But really take all of us through, starting from the very beginning, with really clear definitions and separation and information. I think it would be very helpful before we start then having our heads spin around with dollar signs attached to each one of these categories and having to make decisions that way.
Thank you. I was going to, similar to what Ms. McNutt has just stated, I was going to ask staff, well, two things. First of all, what, if anything, has been done since our August of 2011 meeting on this subject area and now? Do we have any new information?
No, we do not.
Okay. Then the other question is it possible for staff to provide the council with a memo, a report, a writing that outlines the various expenses associated with a development? And I guess an adjunct to that would be the expenses and the methodology for calculating them.
Yes, we could do that.
Is this something that would require us to wait until a future study session in the months ahead, or is that something that we could get more quickly sometime this year, just sent to us as informational item? What would you suggest?
I think what we can do easily is just send the fee schedule plus any fees that may be missing that are applied broadly and send that to council. And we can take some recent projects over the last year that show how those have been applied, and just to make tangible examples rather than just theoretic numbers of $3,797 per acre for a stormwater fee, but to apply that to make it real in a couple example cases.
How long would it take for staff to prepare such a document?
Before Thanksgiving. We could have it to council before Thanksgiving.
Okay. Does, before we get to Mr. Przinski, is there anybody on the council that disagrees with having staff prepare and distribute to us that document? Ms. McNutt, you're going to jump in before Mr. Przinski. Go ahead.
Actually, it wasn't a vote, it was a comment. I think that's fine, but I can't imagine that we're not going to look at that and have a lot of questions and need for clarification, because I know I will, because that's how I am. But so I still think we're going to end up having to do some kind of public meeting on that.
I don't disagree with that. I just wanted to find out how soon I could have more knowledge than I have right now. Mr. Przinski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps aligned with what you're asking, I found attachment 4 a very interesting audit of how community benefit has been applied recently. This was actually dated 8/22/11, but to revisit this and to note that these were the specific items that were accepted as community benefit for each of those projects, I think it was very interesting, particularly 234 Oak Meadow Drive. When you look at the variety of things that were accepted as community benefit, it causes me to question exactly how this process gets executed. And back to the issues that I think we need to address, perhaps in this study session that Councilwoman McNutt is proposing. You know, I think the whole concept of community benefit has become skewed in a significant way from its initial focus back in 1994, which was directed towards traffic impacts. And now we have to recover, because the evolution, I don't think, has been positive. In some ways, it looks like extortion rather than an actual contribution to the community. But to say that each of these projects had these particular benefits that the person who developed the project had to arrive at on his or her own, because we could not make that recommendation, I don't believe, seems to me to very clearly ask for a reevaluation. And I'd like us to go back to a more simplified approach to this. I think to delete the terms community benefit and come to another identification that perhaps more closely ties as to what we're intending would be a really important thing. I think we do have to spend some more time studying this. I don't think we're going to arrive at that tonight, but I think that we have great example here on attachment 4 that shows perhaps how far afield the whole concept has gone and when it's been applied.
Further discussion? I agree, and I'm going to circle back to staff to see exactly the direction staff is requesting tonight vis-a-vis the meeting at which we will be discussing plan developments. I agree with Mr. Przinski. I believe the term community benefit should be eliminated. I also believe that, and this will take place when we discuss plan developments, but I definitely believe that plan developments, if we keep the concept, are, and and I've heard staff say this, plan developments are concessions. And they, in my experience, have been concessions that have provided for more density than our ordinances will allow. That density has increased traffic. So therefore, again, assuming that plan developments continue on in our ordinance, the analysis we will be doing is of traffic impact and the cost to the developer or applicant of that increased traffic impact. I did have one question of staff. In the report and in other reports with which I've dealt, there's the term infill has been used. I think I know what we're talking about, but just so we're all on the same page, when you use the term infill, what do you mean?
That's a good question. It's a very good question. Infill is when there's a parcel that is underutilized. And that's getting more and more difficult because we're running out of those types of sites. As an example, Ditto's Lane may have been an infill project. That is something that I think we need to revisit because amongst ourselves we have to analyze when we get a parcel in, does it classify as an infill project or not? So I think when we come back to you, we can clarify that more.
Thank you. Let me follow up then. Let's say we have a parcel that under our zoning ordinances, current zoning ordinances allows for 10 homes. A plan development is proposed. With the concessions requested, it would have 12 homes. Would we then consider that an infill project because it may potentially allow for additional homes?
No, that wouldn't be considered an infill project. And just for clarification, plan developments do not allow a density to be increased. So densities are not allowed to be increased, but intensity could be. So floor area ratios, lot coverage, things like that. That is permitted under a plan development process.
Thank you. Further questions of staff? If I would please ask staff to tell us what you understand, the direction you have received this evening. I will ask the council to pay attention, and if you don't agree with what staff has said, please let me know.
First, for information purposes, by Thanksgiving, staff will provide council and make publicly available our current fee schedule updated to include any missing recurring fees, as well as examples of how that has been applied in the last year on some exemplar projects to make that real. We will, second through the statement just made, look at a process, possibly the study session, to clarify infill, as well as a comprehensive presentation of what types of fees or community benefit are charged or requested under current policies. And I would support the notion of pulling that into a study session discussion. Also for that study session, staff will consider some of the public access comments that have been brought forward in terms of replicating a complete consolidated fee schedule for that April consideration to make sure that it's available at least in a single public hearing every year. And second, to consider the fiscal impact section of every staff report as an opportunity to provide project-specific application of those fees in advance of approval, rather than it just being an after the fact. Last would be to, when we bring the fee study forward, which is an update of the 2010, to ensure that we're including a matrix both for comparison purposes with other jurisdictions, as well as what that might mean in reality to standardized developments, so we can see the impact on both sides, and to try to bring that all back forward for a study session, I would think, by March, if it's to impact next year's fees.
Clarification, the presentation regarding fees, that was I think your number 3 bullet, study session, presentation of fees. Did you have a date for that? Is that the one that you said March, or can that be sooner?
Yes, Public Works has been in extensive management transition. I will see if we can have it back to council for February or March. I believe that would be the earliest possible.
And would that be a different meeting than the last one with the fee study?
It would be that fee study plus the other issues that have been brought up tonight.
All right.
That the 2010 consideration dealt with a broad array of fees. The council adopted all of the fee increases that were proposed at that time, save for the traffic impact fee discussion. So what you dealt with in 2010, we don't have to do all over again. Just the traffic impact fee portion is all that has to be redone.
And you're distinguishing 2010 from the 2011 meeting that we had?
Correct.
All right. Is there anybody on the council that disagrees with the direction that the town manager has just verbalized for us? Seeing none. Anybody on the council have anything else to propose or discuss? Is that a yes, Mr. Brzezinski? Okay, that is a no, Mr. Brzezinski. All right, well, that being said, I thank you all. I thank staff. This meeting is adjourned.